What's up, guys? Alpine Gremlin again here with some more World of Tanks. I think it's time that we did another tutorial instead of medium tanks, because we've already, I've kind of beat that topic to death. I think it's time we looked at the heavy tanks. So this is going to be my heavy tank tutorial. Now, before I start, I need to let you guys know that I have not played every heavy tank in the game. I have not played every nation's heavy tank in the game. I've only gone down the Soviet heavy assault IS line, and I'm currently grinding down the American heavy line. The only German heavy I actually have is a Löwe, which is a premium tank. So I know a lot of what I know a lot of the nations. The heavy tanks are probably the most unique in that across each nation, their play styles differ the most. So, what I mean is that each nation's specific play style really comes out with their nation's heavies. So if we look, now I'll just go over the basic components. American heavies, American heavy tanks, like the T-29, the T-34, and the M103, all play in hold-down positions. They have very weak hull armor, but their turrets are very thick, very well rounded. So they play they play the best when they're behind cover, hull down. They're good for locking down corridors, and though they are susceptible to being flanked. You've got German heavy tanks, which in most cases are better. They have the best armor, especially at the higher tiers. They have the most accurate guns and are therefore better played as snipers. Soviet tanks are kind of knife fighters, meaning they like to get up there, they like to brawl, they excel in close range combat. Their guns have high alpha damage but low accuracy, so they're not suited for sniping. What's important to notice about the Soviet is that they have the two different heavy lines. You have your, branching off the KV-1, you've got your heavy armored tanks, the KV line leading up to the IS-4, and then you've got the KV-1S line leading up to the IS-7, which are the heavy assault tanks. Basically, the heavy assault tanks, like the IS-7, have less actual armor thickness, but are angled a lot better, so they have good effective armor thickness. The pike nose design is good for engaging enemies from one direction, but isn't so good at taking on multiple opponents from different sides, because you got that pike nose, and if you try to negate one weakness, like the lower glacis, like let's say you try to angle it that way, well, now you've just given them shots at a side of your pike, which flattens out the pike's angle. So IS series are good at, the IS tanks are good at being in your face because of good turret armor, low to the ground, good for brawling. Whereas the heavily armored vehicles are better at engaging multiple opponents at once because their armor is just thick in general. Now, French tanks. French heavies really aren't what I would consider heavies. They're more like big mediums because, yes, they've got some weight to them, but they're very fast. They have very little armor, and they're very, very maneuverable. So in reality, they're better. I would classify French heavies as medium tanks just because they're so fast. Like, look at the 50B. The MX-50B goes 65 kilometers an hour. That's faster than some light tanks. So, and the Chinese heavies pretty much play like the IS series line. So heavy assault tanks that excel at brawling. Now, in general, and I'll put up all this in annotations and all that, but in general, heavy tanks are the backbone of any team, no matter what nation they're from. If you're in a heavy tank, especially if you're in a top-tier heavy tank, you're going to be expected to be leading the push or leading the defense. However the situation has developed on the battlefield, heavy tanks are chiefly responsible for being the main force behind any kind of team. In general, you've got one of the biggest guns on your team. You've got the best armor on your team in most cases. Now, heavies are susceptible to being flanked, though, because they're so slow, and so that's where, you know, mediums and TDs and all that come in to help protect your flanks. But you need to be up there taking the hits. You need to be up there doing the damage, because your team looks up to you. And when a team with, you know, chicken shit heavies, you know, it's amazing how the morale of a team can go up just by you being there. I've been in games where I'm the top tier heavy, and just me being on the flank gives my team more confidence. So, and a team seeing their high tier heavy actually grow a pair, and seeing their high tier heavies actually out there doing their job, your team is much more likely to come and support you. In most cases, I remember I did a video on my top tier duties a little while ago, a couple months ago, when I was doing when I had my IS-8, and it's the same thing. You know, when you're in a high tier heavy tank, you're expected to be leading the push, and in most cases, your team will only advance when you advance. You know, you'll have lower tier vehicles behind you, and they're basically waiting on you to make the move. It really sucks when, you know, a lower tier vehicle has to lead the push because their heavies are either too incompetent or too stupid or too cowardly to do anything. So if you're up there, your team is more likely to support you, and they're going to be a lot more successful in most cases. Heavy tanks unlike mediums, which rely on their speed and not getting hit, heavy tanks rely on their armor and angling. When you're in a heavy tank, you got to get in the habit of angling your armor, because yes, you know, the M103, for example, has 203 millimeters of hull armor, but with the tanks the M103 is going to be facing, they can penetrate that frontal armor. If you angle the armor, you're more likely to bounce. But since it's an American heavy, you should be using that turret anyway. You should be exposing the turret and not the hull anyway. Same things with German tanks. German tanks excel when their armor is angled. For example, you know, if you look at, I'll just use the Love as the kind of the diagram here, but like, let's say you're driving an E100 or an E75. Let's say you come across a bunch of heavies. Well, if you present this to them at a flat angle, they're just going to put shots into your lower glacis. If you angle the lower glacis, then they're more likely to bounce. Now, not all the time, because some guns just have the pen to get through you anyway, but in most cases, if you can increase the effective armor thickness by just angling your armor. Another tactic that you want to get in the habit of is side scraping. You've seen me do it in several of my videos. Side scraping is which you might see in some of the gameplay examples I'll have for this tutorial. In general, when you side scrape, you use some kind of solid object which as cover. You basically present your side armor to an enemy at an angle that is difficult for them to penetrate, and it works well for most tanks. Let's say, because that angle is so steep, it's either just going to get eaten by the tracks, the shell, or it's going to bounce off. It's just going to bounce off. So let's say this whole front part is completely covered by the buildings. If they, you know, and let's say an enemy shoots at that, they bounce, then you can move out of cover and shoot them. What's important to note is that side scraping does make you susceptible to being flanked. If you're showing this side here and an enemy comes out over here, they're just going to shoot you in the side. It's not good for engaging multiple enemies on multiple flanks, and it makes you susceptible to artillery splash damage. So you do need to be aware of what's around you, and you need to keep an eye on your mini-map and what is on the enemy team before you do a side scraping maneuver. Let's talk perks. For your crew, you notice a common factor with all of my crews, all my heavy crews. All of my heavy crews are trained in repairs, and a lot of my heavies have a toolbox. That's because when you're in a heavy tank, your modules are going to take damage, your tracks are going to get blown off, and you want to get those tracks up as quickly as possible. So in general, make sure that you're training your crew up in repairs. Repairs, then brothers in arms. You could see my repairs is the most important because you want to get those modules up as quickly as possible. In general, you want for equipment, you're going to want large caliber tank gun rammers, enhanced gun laying drives, because most heavy tank guns do have slow aiming times. Improved ventilation never hurt, but it does depend on what vehicle you are using. Toolbox is also, if you can't think of anything else, a toolbox is always a good thing to have. Vertical stabilizers or a super heavy spall liner might not hurt either, just because as a heavy you are going to be a primary target for artillery fire. So anything that can help improve your survival. Medium tanks, you know, they're better with Sixth Sense, Brothers in Arms, things like that. But heavy tanks, you know, Sixth Sense really isn't going to matter, because you're going to be being seen by the enemy anyway, because you're going to be up on the front lines slugging it out. Now, in general, because of that, you know, they're very different from medium tanks. So if you're using a heavy tank, forget everything I said in my medium tank tutorial, because it's just a whole different world out there. And remember, it's a different world within a world, because every nation's heavies play differently. I'm just going to... The tips I'm going to be giving in this video and the gameplay examples are general tips. So you need to figure out how to play each nation's heavy differently, because I haven't played every nation's heavy, so I don't know how specifically each one plays. As you guys know, I'm a big medium driver, so I can play heavies and I can generally play heavies effectively, but I'm not an expert on them. So without further ado, let's show you guys a few gameplay examples. I'm not going to show full games, I'm just going to be showing clips. So here's our first example. I'm in my T-29, mid of the list. It's a tier 8 battle on the monastery map, Abbey, and I'm platooned up with a buddy of mine. He's in his T-20. Basically, what you want to keep in mind when in this example is my nation, American. So I'm driving an American heavy, so you're going to want to keep that hull down. You're going to want to protect that hull, and I'm going to run into some thick competition here. I'm going to take out the Scout Panther. Now you can see right there, I showed too much of my side, and he penetrated and did damage to my tracks and took off 154 damage. So remember, American heavies have very, very weak turrets. I mean, not weak turrets, weak hulls. So the Carnarvon fired, but I'm kind of skeptical about showing too much of my hull out there. I'm trying to hug the wall as good as I can. As you can see there, I got penetrated. Bad play by me. Got my tracks blown off again. So here I'm going to wake up, and I'm like, okay, I can't be doing this. I got to get hull down. I got to force them to have to shoot at my turret, because this Carnarvon is a tough target. I'm just peeking out. He just fired, so I'm going to go out and try and get a shot into his lower glacis plate. There's one. Now another part of heavies, about playing heavies, is spotting those weak points. Now here he comes, and I get another shot into his lower glacis. But I'm having a slug. I realize what I'm doing. I'm having a slugfest with a goddamn tier 8 heavy, and that's not working for me. So I'm calling for help, because they're going to start pushing me. T-29 bounces off my turret. I'm getting my T-32 up here. Now these guys are pushing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna you can see me, I'm preparing to do a side scrape maneuver. I'm just trying to create as awkward angles as I can. Carnarvon come around the corner, take his tracks off. Now he's tracked. Let the T-32 take some hits, because remember, I'm not top tier. I could take hits, but I can't take a lot of them. One more hit on the Carnarvon, get him out of the fight. Alright, Tiger 2. I side scrape. I get into a position to side scrape the Tiger, but he just goes after the medium tank, my platoon mate. Bounced off the Tiger. So remember, getting into a side scrape, backing off here. I'm using this little berm here to cover myself. Shooting into the side of this VK. Now these guys are not angling right. They're showing me their side armor, which is not a good option. Tiger 2 just got hit by artillery. Now here's a side scrape. Now, but he misses. But if he had connected, that would have just gotten eaten by my tracks. Now I showed what I did there is I basically showed him just this track, and he shot it, and because the track is a no hitbox zone, because it's not really, because his shot didn't go into my physical tank, it hit the tracks and came out here, it didn't actually do any damage. So that's also a viable tactic, is if you can just have them shoot your tracks as opposed to them shooting your hull, that's acceptable too. It now gave that T-32 a chance to shoot. So we're really just kicking the snot out of these two tier 8 heavies. Shoot his lower glacis. Now we're taking hits from the rear, but our AT-15 took out their Scout Panther. Luckily we have support here, so our flanks are protected. Got another shot into that TIG too. Now you can see, whenever they start pushing like that, I get into a position in which I can hopefully try to side scrape them. Now if they're competent, they're not going to fall for that, but it's better than nothing. If you can create the most awkward angle you can for them to shoot at, it will increase your survival. See him bouncing off my turret mantlet there. Got another shot into his lower glacis. Took a bounce off of the side of my turret. Something small. Probably the Panther M10 or something that doesn't have the pen to get through. So the AT-15 is flanking, and I get a shot into the VK's side. I do take a hit on my hull. So now you've seen an example of an American heavy gameplay. Let's show you some Soviet heavy assault tank gameplay. IS-7 leading the push. With me I've got two platoon mates, Volker Ball and Slappin' Bad Kids from my clan. They're in their E-100s. First target, T-32. These guys really aren't too much of a threat for me. You can see just a little bit of angling and he can't penetrate me. But remember, he is a tier 8 and he's only got 198 millimeters of pen. So really all he can do is just wait and get penned. We are here on steps. So now we're starting to encounter some higher tier foes. There's a Jagdtiger. Now keep an eye on that Centurion because I am going to have to angle against him as well. Jagdtiger got a lucky shot into my viewport on my turret. Centurion is just bouncing off my pike. Right now I'm just showing him my turret and just kind of wiggling my turret back and forth to give him a weird angle. But I see a better target. Jagdtiger just fired, missed. Shot at the Jagdtiger. Centurion just keeps bouncing off. So let's focus on that E-100 now. Focus him up because he's a high tier heavy. Want to get him out of there as quickly as possible. Lower glacis shot, unangled. Goodbye. Alright, so now we're moving on. Like I said, your team is much more likely to succeed and get their fingers out of their own asses if your heavy tanks are leading the push, which we are doing right now. There's a Jagdpanzer E-100 primary target. I let Volker know, hey, there's a Death Star coming up on you. Take a shot at that scent, taking a few bounces off my turret. I'm trying to get reasonably hull down here because the IS-7 is good for that. There's a bat shot on my flank. I gotta try an angle. bounce him, take him down. Now we're in a little bit of a pickle here because we're surrounded from all sides. Now this is the whole thing. Heavy tanks are easy to flank and are susceptible to it. So we're basically consolidating ourselves here around all these guys. T-62A bounces off my turret, but I bounce off him. Now that Batshad is still hanging around, so Volker and I are kind of having to consolidate ourselves around. Slapping Bad Kids is coming around right to take out that IS-8, but he does get nailed by the Death Star. IS-8 comes out of cover, I nail him. That Batshad is still hanging around. Here he comes. He took a hit. Batshad takes out Volker. He gets one more hit into me, but I'm loaded and take him out. And our team moves in to help us out. And then those mediums are those Batshots are gonna make quick work of that T-62A over there. So with that, we move on and finish off those mediums and get on cap. So here we've got some high-tier American heavy gameplay. I'm here in my M103. This was before I upgraded. This game was before I had fully upgraded the tank to my. I'm using this first 120mm, but it's still got enough pen to take out most foes. You can see that E75 has the stock gun. He bounced off my turret. Kind of just playing hold down as much as possible. Kupala shot on the IS-2. I'm with Mojo here in his STI. We're attacking the southern flank on not Mannerheim line, Arctic region. Shot on the E75's Kupala. Like another part, you gotta pick out those weak points when you're driving heavies, because all heavies do have weak points. So managing yours and engaging other weak points is a big part. You can see that IS-7 did pen my commander's hatch back there, so you gotta watch out for that, because American heavy turrets do have weak points. Side of an IS turret. Now you can see right here, I'm the high tier heavy on this flank. I've got to push up, and you can see as I push up and take out enemies, my lower tier heavies follow me because they want to support a competent, aggressive heavy driver. Lower Glacie shot on the E75 bounces. I probably should have taken that Cupola shot just because he's angled pretty well. So now I'm up below him, but still bouncing off that angled lower glacies of him. So well played to him. He knows how to stay angled. But now he's tracked, and I got a perfect shot at his belly. So E75's out of the fight. Shot on the Tiger. So we're moving up. We won that flank very quickly, thanks to good top-tier heavies and good support. I'm going to get a quick cheeky shot on the KV Force turret. And he gets taken out. Let's get some cheeky shots onto that Yag Tiger, yeah, but I don't even get a chance to because my team takes him out. T-54 coming up. I'm gonna use this covered. I'm gonna use these rocks here to cover my lower hull. But I get a nice shot into him. He misses. He goes back below the rocks. So here's another target, a Tiger P. But that Tiger P's got 200mm of armor. That's very, very troll, that armor, even at tier 9. But my next shot does not fail to penetrate. There's the Artie. Take him out. I get tracked by the M4A6 Patton, but you can see how my repair skill allows me to repair my treads within 5 seconds and get out of there. Now my buddy Mojo, his client crashes. That's why you can see him just mindlessly charging out there. Still taking hits on the side from that Patton, so I got to get into cover. Take out the T-54, take a bounce from the Patton. So the Patton basically goes back and runs into our enemies in there. So this game's pretty much won. Now here we are. Here's an example of how to take a lot of damage in your heavy, how to bounce a lot of shots. I'm positioned very well on this map here on Erlenberg. Now, unfortunately, because of my incompetent teammates that can't cover my flanks, I do die here. But you notice I'm the only. Look at the map here. I'm the only heavy here. I'm the only tank here, really. That T-71 is scouting, but you know, I mean, that's really. He's not going to last longer. All these jackholes right here are just camping it out on the hill behind me. I'm the only tank defending this flank on Erlenberg. I'm in my IS-7, but this is a very good position because you could see that. All that's really showing, and I'm going to adjust myself so I'm even better angled, even more well angled. All that they can see is the right side of my pike and my turret. And none of those shots are going to pen me unless they're throwing some very, very, very good gold. So you can see all these bounces. Unfortunately, the IS-7's gun is not a sniping gun, as I've already explained. See, bounce, bounce, ting, ting. Again, all I'm really here doing is being a stopgap. I'm pretty sure this round I soak up like 12, 13k damage worth of rounds. There's another bounce. Now I don't want to turn my turret at that E100 because I don't want to give the side of my turret to them. That just takes off my tracks. There's another bounce. Missed the WZ. Bounce, bounce, ping. You see that heat, that sizzle? Those are premium rounds. These guys are getting frustrated. They switched to gold. Put one into that Centurion. Thank you, RNG. You can see they're not only just bouncing, they're also missing and shooting the rubble next to me. Bing. Ting. Now you can see what I said right there. I'm basically what I'm telling these guys is I have a very strong position here. I can take on whatever's coming at me. Look at all those friggin' ricochets off the front of my tank. I can pretty much take whatever's coming at me from the front. But if I get flanked on the side, if someone gets around me, I'm done. And those guys on the hill are doing nothing to help me. There's nobody in center to protect my flank. And if I try to change my angling to engage someone on my flank, then these guys are going to get shots on me. Again, I'm the only thing keeping these guys from crossing this hill. Put another good shot into that Centurion. There's another bounce. Heat. Premium. Ting. Now, by holding this flank, I basically win the game for my team, but I do get killed because of my team's incompetence. Now, here's a problem. E100 is rushing. This E100's pretty much had enough of me. I'm wiggling my turret to make it harder for him to penetrate my turret. Put one into his lower glacis, but I bounce. I'm doing the same thing, wiggling my turret to keep him. Bounce, ping. All these bounces. Now, this is when I run into trouble, because I know what the C-100's doing. The C-100 has had enough. He's gonna... I'm telling my team, guys, there is an E-100 charging me. He's going to get around on my flank. I need help now. Because I can't angle against all these guys at once. If he gets onto my side, this game is over. and I'm getting absolutely no help. Bounce. There's a... Now that E100 has good repair skills, so he knows how to play heavies. He knows what he should be doing. But, you know, see what he's doing? Now I have to change my position because that E100 is going to get around and put one into my side. Now you can see I'm taking all kinds of hits. Because I'm done. Because he's onto my flank, and now I have to angle against multiple opponents. So he's gotten me off of my strong position. I'm still asking for help, but no one's coming. And now he's just going to pen me with gold. And that's game. And you can see, if only I had more support, that E100 would not have been able to do that. If these guys on the hill here had actually done something, then he wouldn't have been able to do that, and I would have locked down that flank. Alright guys, so that is how to play the heavy tank. I hope you enjoyed this video. I tried to show as many examples as I could. I know it was a long video if you guys have made it this far. So, yeah, I hope this helps, and good luck out there. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.